There's a reason that we live so far from Hollywood, in the country looking hard to find a home, with nothing perfect or considered, but we're so damn good. It's the story of your life, you're moving down the page, and you know.
Morning glory, America, bonjour, hi, Canada. I hope all of you are happy out there. There's another snowstorm heading for northeastern Ohio, so it's all things are normal. I just want to point out, nobody gets upset with a foot of snow in Ohio. That's simply considered, as I said, March. I want to begin with a happy birthday to Aaron. Get going, Aaron. Hope Russ is taking good care of you this morning. One of the great people in our lives, Russ and Aaron. They listen every morning before Aaron goes off to teach the children. There's a story today, by the way. Aaron, you need to hear this. It's about teachers generally. And many of you have said to me, what happened to your voice? It got like Chris Christie, laryngitis over the weekend, and it's sort of coming back, but I'm fine. I feel good. I do not have COVID. I just have a little laryngitis. Now, the story that I wanted Aaron to hear is that American school teachers are quitting by the droves, and they are being immediately hired by private businesses, finally recognizing that teachers are quitting and companies are hot to hire them, according to the Financial Times. Burned out teachers are leaving the classroom for jobs in the private sector where talent-hungry companies are hiring them, often boosting their pay, to work in sales, software, healthcare, and training, among other fields. Now, I think Erin could actually run anything, and she also makes the best soda bread and indeed the very best maple cake ever. So that would be the bonus. It's sort of like drafting people to come work in the White House so they can play on the White House basketball team. But Erin also has managed an extraordinarily successful classroom for 30 years. So just wanted to give you that heads up. Happy birthday, Erin. Other news. Pfizer BioNTech vaccine for children under 5 should be available by the end of next month, by the end of February. I do not know. I'm going to find out from my daughter today, who's very pro-vaccine, very pro-booster, and her children have been, all 3 of her children have had COVID. 2 of them are in school, primary grades, very young. And then there's a toddler who has not been vaccinated, but who also had COVID. And I just wonder what she's going. She's very pro-COVID, very pro-vaccine, but she's also dismayed at schools and the lack of common sense, having spent the last year in Great Britain where they kept schools open no matter what. I think she's one of the many millions of people who have lost confidence in this government. In fact, that's the big story on Special Report last night, so I want you to get my takes. Bad polling. So Shannon Bream, sitting in for Brett Baer, goes to the panel, and my first question is, well, here it is, cut number 3.
And to add to those, we'll pull up some ABC Ipsos polling, and it does talk about crime and COVID, but also immigration. And approval for the president, Hugh, is tough there. He's upside down 30 points on immigration. On crime, the same thing. At COVID, it's 50-49 on approve, disapprove. So he's got multiple topics where Americans are feeling rattled.
President Biden is in a deep hole, Shannon, and it's getting deeper, and he won't stop digging. He's flailing around, and he's failing as a president. 2 numbers to remember. In 2010, that was the first election to follow President Obama's election. House Democrats lost 63 seats. In 2018, the first election to follow President Trump's election, the Republicans lost 43 seats. So this is traditionally the worst year of a president, 1 term or 2. And redistricting is underway, and our friends over at the Cook Political Report keep a scorecard. Republicans have netted 2.5 seats despite just the most amazing, almost Salvador Dali maps that came out of New York and Illinois that are the height of partisan gerrymandering, and I salute them. I salute partisan gerrymandering. But Republicans are going to take back the House. So if Joe Biden's going to get out of that hole, he needs a reset. This afternoon, the White House leaked to the Washington Post that Secretary Becerra is just not doing his job very well at HHS. So I think the reshuffle is going to start there and include Zients and Fauci and Walensky we're going to have some name changes on the doors pretty soon, I think. Now, Ari Fleischer disagrees with me that will help Biden. It may not help Biden, but it can't hurt him. And when you're that desperate, I think Ron Klain, the deputy president, knows they have to do something. How desperate? I got a chance to answer that. Cut number 4.
Hugh, what do you think's going on at the DNC?
I think lots of people want to escape from the DNC and from the White House and from especially Congress, so many retirements. Shannon, in a nutshell, it's desperate on the Democratic side, and that does not upset me at all. They don't have an answer to the crime issue and the COVID breakdown. They don't have an initiative that they are going to get through. They don't even have an idea how to make the Supreme Court nomination that is pending into a story. They're desperate for a story. They would love there to be controversy over whether it's Judge Brown Jackson or Justice Kruger in California or Judge Childs. There isn't going to be any controversy. I think the over-under 65 votes. They don't have an answer. They don't have an initiative. They don't have an exit strategy to stop a red wave that is building, and I don't know how they can come up with one. They're not going to come up with one. One last bite at the apple on the Biden nightmare. Cut number 5. That's temperate. That's exactly what I'd like to see the DNC chair pushing out. I'm sure he checked that with Ari's successor at the White House, calling everyone fascists who disagree with him. That is, in fact, a reflection of how far gone the Democratic Party is on messaging. They've lost the ability to communicate with, A, nobody knows who Mr. Harrison is, period, beyond the Beltway. And B, when they do hear about him, they're going to find out he's calling them a fascist. It's not a winning recipe. It was fun last night. It was just all about the woe that has befallen Team Biden. Other news, the FDA has granted the Moderna vaccine full approval. The Novavax company has applied to the FDA for the authorization of its COVID vaccine to bring another one online. This is a shocker. New Broadway shows have struggled after the industry reopened, according to the New York Times. Who wants to... Honestly, you broke a habit. When we locked down America, we learned, and that's why Democrats are going to get punished across the country. So many different industries have been so badly hurt by the management or non-management or fecklessness of Team Biden that in returning to normal, in treating Omicron like Delta, which it wasn't, Austria has ended its lockdown. Wall Street Journal ran a story on excess deaths. That is, statistically, if you look at the age of America and the number of people who died pre-COVID, and then you look at the last 2 years, you can back your way into a number about how many people died because of COVID or the effects of lockdown. So since the start of the pandemic, about 6.8 million Americans have died. That's more than 1 million deaths than would have been expected in that time, according to the Journal. The excess deaths are overwhelmingly attributed to COVID, but I think a lot of them are also attributed to the disease of loneliness manifested in drug overdoses, alcoholism deaths, etc. On the markets, bond markets hint of calm after a disruptive sell-off. Let me do my Birch Gold spot this morning. Market update brought to you by Birch Gold. Head to hughgold.com. That's hughgold.com, or text my name, Hugh, to 989898 if you're going to buy gold, which this morning is at 1807. It popped up 0.62% yesterday. The 10-year Treasury at 1.782%. Bond markets are calm, says the Wall Street Journal, but yesterday was a good day on the markets again. The Dow up 408 points, NASDAQ up 469. My only stock that I pay any attention to is Amazon, which went up $111 yesterday, and probably going to... The rebound from the correction is over, and inflation is taking hold, but the markets have figured out that Powell may be serious, and maybe he will do it the right way. Russia and Ukraine, Russia and the United States exchanged verbal blows in the United Nations over Ukraine. Again, the drums of war are sounding, and Team Biden can't really get a strategy together. The Post headline is U.S.-Russia clash sharply at UN over Ukraine. But honestly, there's no audio because our UN ambassador isn't very good at this. Going after the Kremlin mafia is the Wall Street Journal leading editorial, which recommends doing what ought to be done, which is go get the oligarchs. And in the United Kingdom, that is happening. And George W. Bush has sent cash to Lisa Murkowski and Liz Cheney. Politico thinks that's the story. I don't. I still think Lisa Murkowski is going to win handily and Liz Cheney is going to win handily because they're actually mainstream Republicans. And Donald Trump does not drive the politics of Wyoming or Alaska as much as he would say the politics of a deep red state. And deep red, I don't mean Wyoming, which is Liz Cheney's home and her mom and dad's home. And maybe I'm wrong, I just can't see Liz Cheney losing. And in Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, I think, could beat a meteor hitting Alaska. Don't go anywhere. More news on this Tuesday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Buckle up for 2022. The year in politics is going to be rough. The midterm election year seems predestined to banish the Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress. The country senses infirmity in President Biden, and many worry that our adversaries in China, Russia, and Iran sense that opening too. The shadow campaign for the GOP nomination in 2024 opens now, with the clear frontrunner being former President Donald Trump. The ranks of the top tier among possible GOP presidential nominees in alphabetical order starts with two senators, Arkansas's Tom Cotton and Ted Cruz of Texas. Then we have the populist Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. If the world grows even darker in the days to come, Cotton and Pompeo, two former soldiers, start with some advantages. It's possible one or more will run whether or not the former president does. My bet, with 3 years to go, is that Trump runs, and runs hard. Buckle up. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What the Supreme Court has said is you have to have a compelling state interest, and the compelling state interest that the Supreme Court found was the benefits that flow from having a diverse student body, whatever those benefits may be. But you have to have a diverse student body to get these certain benefits, okay? So that justifies this kind of racial alchemy in terms of admissions. Here's the problem. Increasingly at schools, you have, regardless of how supposedly integrated they are, you're getting more and more racial separatism, separate classes, separate dormitories, separate graduations. There's more and more of that going on, and one of the basic reasons for that is because of mismatch, because of the serious mismatch in academic qualifications between Asians, Latinos, blacks, and whites.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
You want to know what's even crazier and funnier in a sick way? There's a security guard right there. The shoplifter, the looter, walks right by the security guard who isn't doing anything. He's got a jacket on with the big security on the back of his coat, and he stands there and watches the guy. The guy literally brushes right by the security guard. The security guard, what are they paying the security guard for? Just to stand there? Why don't we just put mannequins up in stores in New York? I may never go back. I swear, I may never go back. New York is turning into a hellhole, and Democrats are watching it. They're letting it happen. I can't wait to get Joe Borelli's take on all of this insanity.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Lucas, I don't know how to help you!
Your daddy loves you, you gotta know it, pal!
Do you feel the love?
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
What reason does he have to care about some guy who's supposed to be his dad, but he's never around? I can't do it, I can't. I'm not ready for this, man.
I'm done with you.
We all deserve a second chance, right, Ethan?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I selected Jackson Brown Bumps for today, because I'm afraid he'll be the next aging rocker who wants to be off of Spotify. Although it's a joke. All these old rockers who don't want Joe Rogan to have a platform, I find that to be the 1969 rebels are now in favor of silencing a broadcaster. I just find it so funny. So we want to make sure that we get through Jackson Brown and other aging rockers before we have to rely on cover bands. The Republicans lead the 2022 money race. I'm Hugh Hewitt from the West Coast this morning. Major Republican organizations focused on winning back control of the House and Senate ended last year with significantly more money than their Democratic counterparts, a reversal of past fortunes that suggests a shifting momentum in the elections ahead, according to Michael Shearer and Isaac Stanley Becker in the Post. The new fundraising totals, revealed Monday in filings with the FEC, showed both parties holding records amount for the off-year congressional cycle. But the growth in the Republican cash hoard compared with 2020 and 2018 cycles outstripped Democratic gains, as GOP donors, particularly those who give 7- and 8-figure checks, leaned into the effort to take back control of the House and Senate this fall. The Republican Party's campaign committees for the House and the Senate, along with the super PACs affiliated with the Republican House and Senate leadership, reported nearly $200 million in combined cash on hand by December 31st. That's more than $24 million more than the Democrats had on hand. So we are actually, they only had $161 million on hand. So they've got $220 million in the Republican coffers versus $161 million in the Democratic coffers. $60 million goes a long way in congressional and House races. The EPA, by the way, is moving to take over again, reissue Obama-era rules on power plants, which were going to be disastrous for the economy. And Team Trump got rid of them. And now they're coming back because they don't want us to have energy in the United States. They want us to be like Europe, cold, dark, shuttered, at the mercy of Russia. I already told you that teachers are quitting, companies are hot to follow them. Whoopi Goldberg caused an uproar. And I'm gonna save that for the next segment and get your calls. 1-800-520-1234. What was Whoopi trying to say? Do I have the short form? Let me play the short form of Whoopi, cut number 7.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
You know, there are 4 other people on The View, none of whom spit out their coffee. So I just find it's a test of the intellectual mettle of the group that Whoopi can say that. More on that, 1-800-520-1234. The question is, what was she trying to say? What do you think she really thinks about the Holocaust? So we're going to come back to that. Kiev, they now call it Kiev, Ukraine. Boris Johnson has flown off to Ukraine after getting many, many calls that he resign, after a scathing Sue Gray report on the parties at number 10, but he bought himself some time by saying, as Sue Gray did, well, the police are now investigating whether crimes were committed. So we're going to wait for that. And there's a plot, but the Tories are always plotting. Israel is joining the massive U.S.-led naval exercise in the Red Sea for the first time. That's a very good bit of news. A very good bit of news. And It's in the Times of Israel. The Israeli Navy will take part in a massive American-led naval exercise kicking off yesterday, along with dozens of other nations, including some with which Israel does not have formal ties. More than 9,000 people from 60 militaries are taking part in the international maritime exercise known as IMX. Participants include Djibouti, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Comoros, Pakistan, and yes, Israel. Because nobody likes Iran. Everybody knows China, Russia, and Iran are the new entente of evil in the world. And these are the people who aren't necessarily going to be in their camp. Doesn't mean they're going to be in our camp, but at least they're going to know how to get signals across from ship to ship. Don't go anywhere. Good for the UAE. Don't go anywhere, America. We're going to talk about Whoopi after the break on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
It seems like the Democrats tried their best to try to eliminate the filibuster, and it failed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, thankfully, it did fail. Republicans stood united against that, as we have been from the very beginning, and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin also stood with us in preserving the rules and the customs of the Senate. These rules and customs go back more than 200 years, Charlie. They are directly downstream from where our founders created a Senate in the first place, to provide the sober second thought against radical sweeping change to our country. It's pretty amazing that 48 out of 50 Democrats were willing to blow up the filibuster. They were willing to break the rules to change the rules. And Charlie, that would have just been the first step towards redistributing political power in this country. The Democrats' next stop probably would have been to make Washington, D.C. a state, our federal city that is by far the most liberal jurisdiction in America. So the Democrats could get 2 more Democratic senators in perpetuity. The next stop would have been to pack our federal courts, to include the Supreme Court, to stop the courts from overturning any of these unconstitutional actions. This entire effort, Charlie, was not about just altering this or that public policy. It was about forever changing the structure of political power in our country. You sometimes heard the argument that, well, the Democrats shouldn't do this because the shoe was on their other foot. Their entire goal was to make sure, Charlie, that the shoe would never be on the other foot. So it was a critical day in the history of our country and the history of the Senate as an institution. And I'm glad we stopped these radicals. That's why we have to turn them out of power in November.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This really is a Leninist strategy. Lenin's old saying that the capitalists will sell us the rope by which we will hang them is what China's doing. The Soviets couldn't do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, they didn't have the money. They didn't have a whole lot of rubles to throw around, and people in the West didn't want them. But number two, there was a lot bigger sense of social cohesion during the Cold War. The notion, if you're a corporate executive during the Cold War, that you would be playing footsies with the Kremlin was outrageous. And yet in the case of China, the human rights situation, the challenge to American national security is every bit as great. I would argue perhaps even greater than it was in the Cold War era. But Wall Street, Silicon Valley, they are all happy to not only do deals with them, but do deals with them that benefit the Chinese military and intelligence state, and they don't seem to particularly care that they do.
Well, there was stigma in helping the Soviets. There's no stigma in helping the Chinese communists.
That's right. And I think that, part of that is there's been this naivete for decades that if we just gave China money, if we gave them access to our technology, they were going to buy our blue jeans, they were going to watch some of our movies, they would become just like us. What's really happened when you look at issues like censorship by big tech in the United States, when you look at some of the other things that are going on, it's not that China's become more like us. We've actually become more like China. And that experiment has to fade away. And the problem is not only were our elites wrong in their prescription of that policy, but that policy made them rich. And they do not want to now give up those relationships with Beijing because it means the money's going to stop flowing.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
This should be Whoopi Goldberg's song. Not really, Whoopi. The things you forgot to say. Whoopi Goldberg has already apologized for what we're about to cover. Good morning, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Late yesterday, about 9 p.m. East Coast time, Whoopi Goldberg issued an apology for saying what she said on The View yesterday. And it's, I was driving back from a special report last night, listening to the great one, Mark Levin, just suggesting she's dumb as a rock. I don't actually understand how anyone does not know this, other than the failure of American education public division. Let's play Whoopi Goldberg on The View yesterday, the long version, cut number 6.
Well, also, if you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
Ethnicity. It's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's about
but
going after
it's
Jews
not about
ideal race.
But these are two white groups of people.
Well, they don't have to black people
see them as white people.
But you're missing the point. You're missing the point. The minute you turn it into race, it goes down this alley. Let's talk about it for what it is. It's how people treat each other. It's a problem. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other. So is it, if you're uncomfortable, if you hear about mouse, should you be worried? Should your child say, oh my God, I wonder if that's me? No, that's not what they're going to say. They're going to
You
say,
hear the music coming up. The producer is having a heart attack.
Cool. Yeah, and most kids,
because the Holocaust,
they don't want to be cruel.
No, they don't.
Of Germany against Jews was very much a racial Holocaust.
Comparing that,
and the people most surprised by what Whoopi had to say would be the Nazis. And so I am now going to do remedial education for the left out there. We have had, since 1933, by my counts, 5 genocides. Prior to 1933, the Turks did commit a genocide against the Armenians, but I'm just talking about from 1933 forward. The genocide of the Armenians at the hands of the Turks occurred during World War I. We had the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews and the Roma were extirpated, as well as many Slavic people and other racial minorities that the Nazis, and gays, by the way, gays and lesbians, were all wiped out systematically, and I'll come back to that. That was a racial genocide. The Cambodian genocide of the Khmer Rouge was not racist. It was ideological. Mao's genocide, his first genocide, the Great Leap Forward genocide, had the unfortunate side effect of starving millions of people to death. And the Cultural Revolution took in a number of people too, but that's not really a genocide. That's just a communist government being a communist government. The Syrian genocide claimed 500,000 people. That wasn't racist. That was Bashir, Russia, and the Obama administration turning its eye away. Cambodia was a genocide brought about by Democrats in Congress refusing to aid our South Vietnamese allies. The Rwandan genocide that occurred under Bill Clinton, he turned his eyes away, killed 800,000 Tutsis. That was race-based. And the genocide underway in the People's Republic of China against the Uyghurs and other racial minorities of their far western province of Xinjiang is also racial. But the Holocaust that Whoopi is referring to, again, can we have the short version of the Holocaust special from Whoopi, cut number 7?
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about
a different race. But it's not about race. It's not about race.
All right, so if you're listening on the radio, you kind of get what she's saying. But if you're watching her, just laugh, sort of. It's not about race. Joy Behar, you're Jewish and you don't say anything. Anna Navarro comes in with some, I'll help Whoopi up out of this jam. They all know she's in a jam. Here's the remedial education. 1-800-520-1234. Why is Whoopi Goldberg saying that? Why? What could she possibly think about the Holocaust? 1-800-520-1234. What does she think it was? I am completely gobsmacked by that comment. So I go to Wikipedia, for Wikipedia is the bringer of all knowledge now. The Holocaust, also known as the Shoah, was the genocide of European Jews during World War II. Between 1941 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its collaborators systematically murdered 6 million Jews across German-occupied Europe, around 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population. The murders were carried out in pogroms and mass shootings, but primarily by a policy of extermination through labor and gassing in concentration camps, including the gas chambers and gas vans that chiefly marked the Auschwitz-Birkenau complex, but also at infamous names like Belzec, Treblinka in occupied Poland. There are many others. Germany implemented the persecution in stages. Following Hitler's appointment as chancellor on January 30, 1933, the regime built a network of concentration camps for Germany. Now, concentration camps had been seen in the Boer War, for example. The Brits used concentration camps against the Boers in the late 19th century. But the Jews were targeted in 1933, and after the invasion of Poland in 1939, then the Nazis got right to it. The senior government officials that okayed the so-called final solution jumped in the Wannsee Conference in January of 1942. But anyone who knows anything about history knows it was about race. So what in the world is Whoopi doing? Joe in Columbus, Ohio, listening on 98.9, The Answer in Columbus. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Honor to talk to you. A big Buckeyes fan here. Not a Browns fan, I'm sorry.
So are you a Bengals person?
I do like the Bengals more than the Browns. I just don't follow the NFL, but big Buckeyes fan.
All right, go Bucks.
So, yep, I gotta say, I like I told your producer, I despise Whoopi. I don't listen to any of that. But I have to kind of. I want you to enlighten me. I kind of agree. I mean, it's about religion, not race. But nope. Please enlighten me.
Nope. The Jewish race, as understood, Hitler was quite explicit in Mein Kampf and in his writings, etc., was not because of their religious practices, because of their Jewish genetics. Absolutely, positively, the Jewish genetic. By the way, there are lots of Jews of color. There are many different tribes of Jews from around the world, and he would have taken them in, even if he was surprised by the fact that there were lots of Ethiopian Jews. He would have killed them too. And it's a genetic thing primarily. Jewishness is a gene type, and my kids are 1/8 Jewish, I believe. So I don't know if they get caught up under the Hitler laws. Touching Mrs. Hewitt is 1/4 Jewish. It's a genetic, racial, like the Han Chinese are trying to destroy the Uyghur Chinese. They're both nationalistically Chinese, but they're different races. Thanks, Joe. Jim in San Antonio. What is Whoopi doing?
Hi, Whoopi. First, you're right. She is a moron. But
I didn't say that. I said that she does not. Moron is tough language.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay. All right. So she's not as bright as a lot of other people there, but she thought. Well, she didn't think that she thought she made being a Jew was religious, not race. Does that make sense?
Do you think that's it?
No, I don't. I understand, but there was a long period of time I did not understand that being a Jew, that Judaism was a race. I always thought it was only a religion. And I didn't know that until, maybe not a couple of years ago because...
Thank you. The connection's terrible, Jim, so I'm going to let you go. I got to explain to people. I started reading early on about the Holocaust. First genocide I read about was actually Stalin's, the kulaks. And I read about that after reading in the 6th grade. My older brother, went to Oberlin. He brought home the book One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. And I've often written and said, most impactful book in my life that's not scriptural. And I said when I finished reading that, I am an anti-communist, and I've never shifted from that. Stalin, evil guy, he wiped out the kulaks in Ukraine primarily, by the way, and that was the first genocide I was aware of. But then I began to read in the genocide, especially a book called The Redemption of the Unwanted about the DPCs, displaced person camps, but sort of the systematic approach to extirpating the Jews. I was shocked. Now, if you live in a Roman Catholic world, as I did in the 50s and 60s, if you go to Roman Catholic school from 1962 to 1974, as I did, you will know that the nuns will teach you that the Jews were targeted by Hitler. It's part of the curriculum. I wonder if we even dare teach it now for fear of being called racially exclusionary. How can people not know this? She's my age. They used to teach, this was when I was born in 1956. It's 10 years after the Holocaust. Holocaust survivors are everywhere. And I knew many. I played poker with a guy, a memorable night in Vegas, and I like to play 7-card stud, and they don't play that at Caesars. So I went across the street to kind of the low-rent hotel across from Caesars, and I sat down at a 7-card stud. I don't win. I'm not very good, but I like to play it. A guy rolls up in his wheelchair, older guy. And I mean, this was unfair, right? So there's 7 players, 8 players, and a dealer. And he rolls up in his wheelchair and I said, "You having a good day?" And he rolled up his arm and there was a number tattooed on it. And he said, "Every day's a good day. Let's play poker." I mean, really, you're going to take my money. So how do people not know this? Tom in Maryland.
Morning, Hugh.
Morning.
Hey, Hugh, Whoopi and Joy Behar are comedians. Lending them any intellectual heft is insanity.
But look, but Tom, I don't. I think it's like knowing that you need oxygen to breathe. The Holocaust is about killing Jews. How can you not know that? Why is she on TV?
Well, because I think that in Whoopi's eyes, or Joy's, or whoever, they believe that, well, Germans were white and Jews were white. How could it be racist?
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Of course, there are many non-white Jews, but
sure,
maybe that's it. Maybe that's
it. That,
but then that means she's too dumb for TV. She's too dumb for TV. If that's the case, then she's too dumb for TV. ReliefFactor.com. She's not too dumb to listen to this. Do you hurt, Whoopi? Does every day bring new minor aches and pains because you're aging out? on The View. They're going to find a way to put you to pasture with that. It's like Joe Biden land. I Carrion and Kirkman, there's Veritron Omega. That's relieffactor.com. All right. Lukewarm coffee in my right hand. I take it every morning. And I do that not because it'll heal my broken toe and not because it will fix everything, but it helps mitigate the minor aches and pains that come with exercise or doing stairs or doing anything. If you were out shoveling snow in Maine, which, my gosh, if you're out in front of Seabags, and I hope you are, Seabags employees clearing the way, my brother-in-law in Maine said that the new plow driver pushed all the snow up to his front door. That's not the way to do it. Ohioans, don't make that mistake. ReliefFactor.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
That's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I'll have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I would get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
When you had the period, we got to remember one other thing. Vladimir Putin, Premier Xi, the leader of North Korea, the leader of Iran, these people all see it too. And there is a message being sent globally that America is a laughingstock right now, that the bowl of mashed potatoes that serves as the president in the White House right now is nothing more than a suit.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Could you let that happen for 10 weeks of your...
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Just a little bit of breaking news. 6,000 people are being asked to evacuate their homes in the early morning in our friendly neighborhood city of Winston-Salem. A fertilizer plant has blown up and has been having explosions and fires, and firefighters are backing off. You don't really ever want to have a fertilizer fire factory going on, even if David M. Drucker is your guest who could actually put it into perspective. Drucker, before I go to Whoopi Goldberg, what do you think about that headline, fertilizer fire at a fertilizer plant?
Well, it's just kind of symbolic of what's been going on the past couple of years, all the way around.
Yeah, get in your car and go. That's what it means to me.
Stuff that is exploding all around us.
Yeah. David, what was Whoopi Goldberg trying to say yesterday? I'll play the short version for you. Cut number...
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
So let's just say Hugh and David are in a country somewhere practicing journalism when the Nazis arrive, and they take a look at you and they take a look at me. Which one of us goes to Auschwitz? You do, right, David?
Oh, I'm gone, Hugh.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
So, you, as a Jew, what do you think?
Well, look, people have all sorts of screwy opinions. I mean, I wasn't offended. I was just kind of dumbfounded. I had actually listened to the clip yesterday. Against my better judgment, I was like, oh, here we go again. Another clip from The View. What are they going to give me this time? And it's not that I don't like the show, but it's always, when this stuff shows up on Twitter, it's always something weird. And I'm like, oh, boy. She didn't mean any harm. It's just her sometimes people say things that are not true or weird or just flat out wrong, but they do create this sort of logic that you can buy into, sort of like science fiction when you're watching a movie and you follow the rules. But even the rules she created, it just didn't fit. It just, none of it worked, and you'd think people would know better. But, and she didn't mean any harm. It's just wrong. It's just flat out wrong. There's nothing else to say.
I don't want her canceled. I don't want her thrown off. I just want people to understand, if you're looking for knowledge, you don't go to The View. Because if you're making that level of an error, it's not an interpretation error. It's a category error. Are you really in a position to discuss?
3,000-year wrong error. It's just wrong.
Yeah. And so... Does The View, what do they do today? Do they do a tutorial on the Holocaust?
I don't know. Look, I'm with you. I don't think people need to be canceled or fired because they say one, stupid thing or one mean thing or wrong thing. She did not mean, in my view, I watched this. It doesn't strike me that she means any harm or is a bad person. She just was wrong. So if they want to address it, they can address it. If she wants to continue to be wrong, let her continue to be wrong. I mean, I don't think people need to be punished ad infinitum for these things, but she's since it's a show and they like people to talk about their show, we can talk about it and say, well, that was just flat out wrong, and it'd be nice if they addressed it. But that may be her opinion. I don't see the point of a false apology today where she says, well, actually, I don't believe a word I said yesterday if that's not actually the case. And now, just move on. It's just a show. It's a TV show.
Now let's talk about Professor Ilya Shapiro, great con law scholar, Cato Institute libertarian. He has an unfortunate tweet that very inartful, very inelegant. He's not a racist, but it sounds like he's a racist. He's apologized, but Georgetown suspended him. So why does Ilya get suspended and Whoopi gets back with an apology? And by the way, Ilya apologized as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it would be two different standards. I saw what he said and how he said it. Again, I don't think he should be fired or suspended. He apologized. I think that as a society over the past several years, we've become far too sensitive and unforgiving when people say things in public that are inartful or just wrong or stupid, especially if they immediately apologize. I think, though, this is a reminder of the danger in particular of social media where you have 280 characters in a tweet. You can mess things up. I think the totality of someone's life and behavior is how these things should be judged. If it's an example of how you've been living your life and this just sheds a light on it, that's one thing. When it's the opposite, I think people should show more grace.
I also think Joe Rogan should not be canceled because he's asked some inartful questions of Doctors Malone and McCullough. Then others tell me he's made racist jokes. I have never listened to Joe Rogan. He's been at this since 2009. He's got 190 million downloads a month. But he should be left alone. I mean, Spotify's not going to cancel him. David, your thought?
Well, look, he's a moneymaker, so they probably won't. I mean, look, I think by the same token, I think people should be responsible for what they say, and they should think about what they say. They should apologize when necessary. And if the marketplace and a company and a platform that hosts them is going to take actions because of the marketplace, that's what happens in business in the United States. And
all right, David, I got to get a quick,
be free to do it.
A quick plug-in for In Trump's Shadow. You were at the Nixon Library. You sold a bunch of books. How did Jim Byron do as an interviewer?
He was great, Hugh. I mean, he wasn't you, but Jim was.
That's
great.
the important thing to say.
People in person.
He was very good, but he wasn't you, Hugh. Actually, I love Jim Byron. He's the new director of the Nixon Library. He is now doing the interviews there, and he had David Drucker talking about In Trump's Shadow last week. Sellout crowd, as always, at the Nixon Library. The Nixon Seminar is tonight. Don't miss it. Watch it, beginning at 5 p.m. on the West Coast. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
I believe we'll start to see much more being open about indoor situations, be they theaters, be they restaurants, be they schools, be they workplaces. That doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the way it was 3 or 4 years ago. But I think when it comes to travel, school, workplace, entertainment, we'll start to see a gradual return to normal, even though normal will not be exactly the way it was before all of this.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Could you let that happen for 10 weeks of your children being kept in a box in the library, excluded, put on display, and so on and so forth for that long? I kind of feel like, and I can tell you're a very caring mom, which is why you're bringing this public, but I kind of feel like that would happen for 2 hours, and I would be down there at that school and pulling my kid out, much less 2 to 10 weeks. Did they really endure that for that long?
They really did that for that long, and I really appreciate that question, and I've gotten that question a lot. And how we looked at it as a family is we could pull them and just go about our lives, and they'll just do this to someone else, or we could stay and fight and hold our ground. And my kids didn't want to leave that school. They've been in that school, my son, since 1st grade to 8th grade. They had their friends there. We still had hope that the trusted adults would do the right thing. And we eventually have pulled them to homeschool. But during those weeks, we were fighting. We have hundreds of emails to the administration, the Dallas ISD School Board. We went down, and I brought 30 or 40 grandmas and grandpas and other parents from other schools down to fight and speak on our behalf. Parents even scheduled protests, 3 protests outside the school. So we were fighting, but I think at this point in our country, the war has come into the family, and our kids can no longer be shielded from it. They need to be guided through it, which we did as a family, to build a backbone and learn how to stand up and fight, because this is their next generation. So instead of shielding them from it, we help them move through it with grace, integrity, and dignity, and they came out stronger.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Buckle up for 2022. The year in politics is going to be rough. The midterm election year seems predestined to banish the Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress. The country senses infirmity in President Biden, and many worry that our adversaries in China, Russia, and Iran sense that opening too. The shadow campaign for the GOP nomination in 2024 opens now, with the clear frontrunner being former President Donald Trump. The ranks of the top tier among possible GOP presidential nominees in alphabetical order starts with 2 senators, Arkansas's Tom Cotton and Ted Cruz of Texas. Then we have the populist Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. If the world grows even darker in the days to come, Cotton and Pompeo, 2 former soldiers, start with some advantages. It's possible one or more will run whether or not the former president does. My bet with 3 years to go is that Trump runs, and runs hard. Buckle up. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Look at you! I wasn't ready for that.
And there goes Peter Dinklage beating the crap out of Will Ferrell for calling him an angry elf. I mean, listen, he's certainly not an elf, but he's an angry guy. You know, I hate to put everything in a political perspective here, but isn't it true? And I assume Peter Dinklage is no conservative. He's woke. He wants to cancel Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Why do they always want to cancel everything? You know, they want to cancel everything. What do conservatives believe in? We are for things. Biden's always saying, "Why are Republicans for? Not for anything." Yes, we're for everything. We're for people. We're for people's right to make decisions about their health. We're for movies. We're for different views on the airwaves. We're not for people being canceled or movies being canceled or things being canceled. We're for things. And your side, Biden, is against everything. You're against Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Oh, I mean, Disney obviously taking it seriously because they're redoing the whole movie, I guess. Seriously, what do you portray them as children? Should child actors play the Seven Dwarfs? You're going to get little Billy or Susie, who's about 9? The Seven Dwarfs in Snow White aren't children. Grumpy isn't a kid. I mean, in fact, that would be a great, if they're casting people, maybe Peter Dinklage can play Grumpy. Because he'd fit right in.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So I think in their strategy meeting, they said, okay, people say that Joe Biden's mental decline is impacting his ability to govern. Let's shoot Joe up with whatever sort of kind of adrenaline that is necessary and deploy him out there. I think the point was to try to show that Joe Biden was going to go over the top long, to try to win kudos and praise from the establishment media. This is his first press conference I think he's done in quite some time. Some people said it was his first ever press conference as president. Second? Okay. That was his second press conference. Trump used to do these almost daily. He did them for fun. And I will say, for reasons that we can speculate, the media was pretty critical. They were direct, precise. Now, nowhere even in the ecosystem, nowhere even in the atmosphere of questions towards Donald Trump. And I agree with my friend Tucker Carlson. The press conference was totally weird. It was a strange deal. Joe Biden leaning in. He does this thing where he kind of like hunches over the podium. You notice that, Connor? And he kind of puts both of his arms down and he looks directly at the reporter. And then he whispers. You're exactly right. And he was still calling from a pre-selected list of reporters. And there were multiple blunders that came out of that. But if the point was to try to show the nation, look at, hey, if you have any concerns about how sharp this guy is mentally, I mean, come on. He stood there and talked for 2 hours. I don't think that mission was accomplished.
Keep up with what's trending.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real?
Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back.
This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now.
I believe we'll start to see much more being open about indoor situations, be they theaters, be they restaurants, be they schools, be they workplaces. That doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the way it was 3 or 4 years ago. But I think when it comes to travel, school, workplace, entertainment, we'll start to see a gradual return to normal, even though normal will not be exactly the way it was before all of this.
Saying nothing at great length is Dr. Fauci's specialty. Good morning, America. Morning glory to you. I'm Hugh Hewitt, not on the Beltway, on the West Coast, but I'm joined by Byron York, in, of, and by the Beltway, but the Washington Examiner, Fox News. Good morning, Byron. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Doing well.
What do you make of Dr. Fauci specifically, but generally the White House yesterday leaked to the Washington Post they want Becerra to go. I've written a column saying they need to fire everybody associated with COVID, and then Tony Fauci comes along with another Oracle of Delphi pronouncement. What do you think?
Well, I couldn't tell exactly what he was saying, and let me just give one personal observation. Over the weekend in Washington, D.C., I was out a bit. Went to a place called Union Market, which is a rapidly developing neighborhood in northeast Washington. Didn't used to be a rapidly developing neighborhood. It is now. It was packed, absolutely packed with people. Eating, drinking, looking at stuff. Sunday, went to a restaurant near the Museum of American Art and National Portrait Gallery. It was packed, and the tables were close together. It was a very popular place, absolutely packed. Went over to the museum, spent about an hour there. Big crowds there. People are out living their lives, and this is in Washington D.C., which had been had a big peak of Omicron and has been plunging for quite a while. I was required to show proof of vaccination and a voter ID to vote, which you aren't to vote, to get into the restaurant, which you aren't if you want to vote. So I had to give proof of vaccination, voter, and picture ID to get in. That was and then of course you wore masks inside the museum, which I found pretty oppressive. But people are out living their lives now.
And I believe Dr. Fauci, Jeff Zients, Javier Becerra, Rochelle Walensky have no more influence over people's decision-making than I do. In fact, I might have more because I'm actually open to new information and I'm on the air every day. What do you think is their effectiveness level right now at sending any message to the public about anything?
You know, I think people have a general idea of how serious the situation is. The reason people are out living their lives in Washington, D.C., and I'm only mentioning that because that's where I was over the weekend, is because they think the threat is low. I mean, obviously, if they thought they were going to pick up something that would kill them, they wouldn't be out. And you know, Connecticut Avenue would be this long, empty stretch, the way it was. During the worst of the coronavirus.
Before the vaccine arrived.
In 2020.
Yep.
So people realize this. They follow this, and that's why I think it's ridiculous to try to censure Joe Rogan, for example, because there's a wide range of discussion. People do make their own decisions. We do have these occasional stories of someone who is, defiantly anti-vaccination, anti-coronavirus vaccination, and they won't get vaccinated, and then they catch it and die. People have made their own decisions here, and what you see in cities now, with lots and lots of life going on, and same as suburbs too. I mean, it's just going on all across America. Is people have made a risk assessment. You make a risk assessment when you get in your car. They've made a risk assessment, and they're going on with their lives.
I agree 100%, and it doesn't matter what Dr. Fauci, Dr. Walensky, Jeff Zients, or Javier Becerra says. However, the reason I think they need to go, and I mean tomorrow, is that it's a public health crisis when there are public health officials to whom nobody listens seriously. So that if a new germ arrives or a new variant arrives, and you really need people to modify their behavior, not with lockdowns, but via different ways, via messaging. You need to get rid of the people who are an immediate turnoff. And I also think if Joe Biden ever wants to get a reset like he proclaims, he's not going to get it with Dr. Fauci showing up like a leprechaun at the end of a Lucky Charms commercial every single time.
Yeah, I agree. And look, I certainly think it is time for Dr. Fauci to go, not only on the basis of his performance lately, but just on the basis that he's 81 years old and has been running this agency for a million years, and it's time to move on. I agree the whole leadership is not very good. Dr. Walensky has just said all sorts of wacky stuff and been very indecisive as head of the CDC. As far as Becerra is concerned, I mean, there've been some knives out for him for quite a while. He's been extremely quiet. He's just stayed out of this whole thing, and which is just weird.
Oh, he's running for governor. Do you not know why this is? He's running for governor.
He's running for governor. Doesn't want to be out and on any limbs, any position limbs.
The whole deal with Javier Becerra is he's running for governor, and he does not want to be identified with anything. He doesn't want to be seen with Joe Biden. He doesn't want to be around Kamala Harris. He wants to be the governor of California. And so people just need to understand
a bad choice for his current job.
So. A horrible choice. Yeah, but he can't get fired either, because if you get fired, then you're not going to be governor of California. So they're really stuck. Now let's go back to Joe Biden. I was on Special Report last night, and it's kind of batting practice, right, when the subject is Joe Biden's numbers. And so we were all having the home run derby last night, Ari Fleischer, Mar Eliason, Shannon Bream, and myself. I actually don't think he can recover. And I don't think anyone thinks he can recover. And I don't think anyone thinks the Democrats can win in November. Am I right?
Pretty much correct. As a matter of fact, I saw some really interesting statistics. First of all, Gallup has kept poll numbers since the 40s, and the average midterm loss of a president whose job approval rating is 50 or above is, I think it's about 14, and the average midterm loss of a president whose job approval rating is below 50 is about 37. And since the 40s, there has never been a president who substantially improved his job approval rating between about this time of year in the midterm year and the midterm elections. So it would be unprecedented if Joe Biden somehow got his approval rating up to 50 or above by November. So in other words, you're looking at a president at a party going into midterms with the president of their party well below 50%. Historically, they're in for losses, and we can't say it enough. Their margins on Capitol Hill are incredibly narrow, literally a handful of votes in the House, and no majority at all in the Senate, tied 50-50.
So they're going to get blown out. 63 seats lost in 2010 after Obamacare. 43 lost by Donald Trump. Those are the most recent two first off-year elections of the last two presidents, 63 and 43. 2002 is an outlier because it occurs within a year of 9/11. So we have these two indications that they're going to get crushed. So if you honestly were going to give Joe Biden advice, let's assume Ron Klain is listening as he does most mornings. What's your honest-to-goodness, sincere advice to try and get out of the hole that he's dug?
Wow. Well, what you would do is you would try to do, Bill Clinton had a terrible first year for different reasons, but a really bad first year. And then he tried to rhetorically move to the middle. And then he only really did that after he lost, I think it was about 50 seats in his first midterm in 1994, which became known as the Republican Revolution. Republicans take the House for the first time in 40 years. Newt Gingrich becomes Speaker. So that's a big deal. And then he comes out and he says, he does not mean, but he says, the era of big government is over. And he kind of rhetorically tries to reposition himself in the middle after having made the disastrous decision to put his wife in charge of his premier initiative, which was a health care reform back in 1993. So he repositions himself in the middle. And so that's probably the only thing that Biden could do. But he does not have the political ability, and he doesn't have the energy. I think if you looked at his statements yesterday before the governors, he looked terribly, terribly tired.
We're going to cover that
next. The energy or the ability.
You're right. They don't have an answer. They don't have an idea. They don't have an excuse. They don't have an exit strategy. They are doomed politically. Thank you, Byron York. Follow him at Twitter at Byron York. Watch him on the Fox News Channel and at Washington Examiner. I'll be right back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say, I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment.
I can't go into the particulars.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as.
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it. Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
Then they see the Russia collusion narrative sitting right there in front of them and say, why don't we just say that he cheated?
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want because they literally feel like they're fighting Russian spies and Nazis.
Russiagate has been the most egregious abuse of everything that was supposed to have been good about our government.
The thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for is what they themselves were doing.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Operations, you find that they have this concept that loosely translated English means big help with a little bad mouth. And basically what that means is they're willing to allow people they do deals with in Congress, the Biden family, on Capitol Hill, Wall Street. They're willing to allow those individuals to provide some criticism because they recognize that it maintains credibility for those individuals.
Wow.
What they don't want, Dennis, is for them to sort of go to the third rail, which is number one, cut off Chinese access to Western capital markets and restrict the flow of technology, not stolen technology, but technology given to China. They don't want those two elements stopped.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Was Sonia Sotomayor saying to them that there were 100,000 children in hospitals, many of them on ventilators. Eric, I went and looked up the data immediately. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that I've posted regularly the death rates of COVID-positive people and heart disease and cancer. There are only 119,000 people hospitalized for COVID in the nation as we sat there that day. So you're saying 100,000 of them were children when the data shows that only 5 children are hospitalized out of every 100,000 hospitalizations. There was maybe...
Keep up with what's trending.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. Let me check the markets, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. Yesterday was a good day on Wall Street. The Dow ended the month up. And by the way, rabbit, as we say at the first broadcast day of the month. Dow is up 406 points yesterday. The NASDAQ up 469. And the S&P up 83 as the market bounced off of its correction. Interest rates went down a little bit. The 10-year Treasury dropped down to 1.782%. Now, the sponsor of this show is andrewandtodd.com. They lend you money to buy a house or to refinance your house. andrewandtodd.com is with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, great sponsor of this program. They bring you the market update at this hour every week. Call them at 888-888-1172. Yesterday, the New York Times had a story, the rush for a slice of paradise in Puerto Rico. So the real estate boom has now reached the United States territory of Puerto Rico. And a whole bunch of crypto people are buying up oceanfront in Puerto Rico. Along almost every desirable real estate market, from Maine to Florida, coastal California, definitely Washington, Oregon, Austin, Texas. They've had booms, property booms. And those booms aren't going to end. And people are able to buy more if they have more money because the interest rates are so low. So they're taking money out of their existing investments and they're putting it into new investments. If you want to do that, you want to take the equity out of your existing house in order to buy a rental or an investment property, andrewandtodd.com. It's called a money out refi. The rate varies depending on your own credit, where the house is, and how much you've got left to pay on it, or if you own it 100%. Call them up at 888-888-1172. I don't think in the era of inflation you can go wrong with real estate, but I am not an investment advisor. I am simply someone who tells you if you're going to refinance your house to get money out because you realize real estate is extraordinarily undervalued right now and is going to go up, 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 call andrewandtodd.com, 888-888-1172. I'm going back to Whoopi because I'm still astonished by what she said yesterday. Cut number 7.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about
a different race. But it's not about race. It's not about race.
Okay, she's apologized. But what does she mean? What was she thinking? 1-800-520-1234. Meanwhile, as Byron mentioned, Joe Biden sort of showed up for the governor's meeting yesterday. Here's his comment on the border, cut number 10.
You know, the gangs we're working on. There's a whole lot of illegal movement.
You betcha, but that's not very reassuring. Cut number 11.
And border security, Gov, we're working a lot with the neighboring countries. A lot to do. There's a lot. I think one of the fundamental things we got to do, in addition to some of the changes we'll make, we don't get into today, but is that if we figure out why they're leaving in the first place, it's not like people sit around and say in Guadalajara, I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have, give it to a coyote, take us across the border, and leave us in a desert. The country doesn't want us. We don't speak the language. Won't that be fun?
You know, that's exactly what they think, except for the last phrase. They think this is going to be hard, but the border is open, so let's do it now before someone like Trump comes along and closes the border. He was also going to take questions, Joe Biden was yesterday, but heck no. Harris Faulkner gets the first one off, but listen to this in real time. Cut 12.
But having said that, why don't I stop and take any questions y'all may have? And they tell me I'm supposed to call on Governor Cox first.
Great. I think we'll have
Supreme Court candidates.
Thank you guys.
How long is your
Thank
shortlist?
you guys. Let's go. Thank you guys. Thank you. Come on, let's go. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you. You guys.
Wow, so that was so awkward right then, because clearly the president did not know that when you say, "Can I take any questions?" all the media in the room might have a few. He called on the next governor.
The very funny part is Joe Biden was having a bad morning. And the whole country knows and prays for the president. But he's an old guy and he's overwhelmed and he's desperate, he's flailing and he's failing. And the whole country knows. 1-800-520-1234. What was Whoopi talking about? Am I right about Joe Biden? I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking brought.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son.
His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening this morning. Joe Biden deep in a political polling hole. No way out, no initiative, no ideas, no excuses for the collapse and the failure, and no willingness to change leadership at the top of the COVID, quote, team. What do? Well, we get Whoopi Goldberg changing the subject by saying the Holocaust wasn't about race. And I just have a question. What was she thinking? Ellen in Santa Monica, California. Good morning, Ellen.
Hi, Hugh. You may know about the eugenics movement in this country at the time of World War I. It seems that Hitler knew about it. And he, in Mein Kampf, mentions this as a basis for his racial identity of Jews. The one drop of Jewish blood and all that in the Nazi creed came directly from eugenics.
It's all about race, but I mean, what do you think Whoopi was saying?
I haven't a clue. I never listened to it.
Okay, good for you, Ellen. Thank you. I didn't have a clue either, but I'm hoping somebody does. Ben in Pennsylvania. What was Whoopi saying?
Good morning, Mr. Hewitt. First, let me just say that your allegiance to support an NFL team from your home state is well placed. You just picked the wrong team.
Well, I know I haven't. I'm ready for the next 10 years because the Browns are going to be there a lot more than the Bengals.
I think they're better than was shown this year. I do believe
they beat the Bengals 41-16. That's when they were healthy. They're a good team. They're a great team.
Yeah. But let me just say, as far as Whoopi Goldberg goes, and what I've seen with a lot of these different political talk shows is this. You get people placed into these shows that have no education, no experience, and have no business being on there telling the rest of the world how they should think. We have a local, another talk show station in our area here in northeastern Pennsylvania that replaced Rush Limbaugh when he passed away with a guy who just got out of prison last year, a local guy who was a county commissioner who spent, I believe, 7 or 8 years in prison over fraud and corruption charges, and now has his own radio talk show from noon to 3 every day in our area.
Well, look, I haven't heard him, so I don't know if it's any good. I'm all in favor of rehabilitation. But I do think Whoopi should caution people that just because you're on the air doesn't mean you know anything.
Exactly. We actually have people here on some of these talk shows that are nothing but disc jockeys from music stations that they've elevated into these positions.
A lot of record spinners did that. And in the old days, there was a guy named Tom Likas. Is Tom Likas alive, Dwayne?
Unclear, actually. I'd have to go look. He kind of got himself in trouble and kind of dropped off.
You see, my friend Mark Guerin wants to open the 1-800-IZZY deadline, but now we have Mr. Google, so you can go Google and find out. But Tom Likas didn't know anything. And he had afternoon drive when I started in the business on Saturday mornings at KFI, along with Bill Press and Laura Schlesinger. We had a great weekend lineup. And I was a kid, right? I was 32 or something like that, 1990. And I was always struck by the fact that Likas, who held the afternoon drive, was just dumber than a brick. But he was an old DJ. And a lot of people, talk radio hosts, didn't mean, all you had to do is know how to get to a commercial break and get people to listen to you. So if you said outrageous things, you did blue radio, people would listen to you. And we got John and Ken now, and I don't think they read a book between them every year. And I'm just saying, when you turn on TV on cable, it's the same thing. I see a lot of dumb people, and I want people to know that. Ben, thank you. Phil in Houston. Now, you are...
just calling about Whoopi's comments. I never listened to, or I never watched The View, but what were they talking about before the comment came up? I mean, to me, it's like, well, what's in the news? You think she's trying to make some type of weird comparison that if you don't pick a black SCOTUS jurist, that is racist because you can pick a female Jewish person or a male Jewish person or, someone else, an Italian. Do you think that might be why she made this comment? I don't know. I'm just trying to find out why it came up in the first place.
I don't know. We'll send Dwayne out to look at that. Thank you, my friend. I do want to. I want to update everyone on the New York gerrymandering. Remember how Democrats are upset about gerrymandering? The new map out of New Jersey is just a work of art. It's Salvador Dali. I brought this up last night on the special report, and I just want to tell you how bad it is. Cut number 4. I think I mentioned it in cut 4.
Hugh, what do you think is going on at the DNC?
I think lots of people want to escape from the DNC and from the White House and from especially Congress, so many retirements. Shannon, in a nutshell, it's desperate on the Democratic side, and that does not upset me at all. They don't have an answer to the crime issue and the COVID breakdown. They don't have an initiative that they are going to get through. They don't even have an idea how to make the Supreme Court nomination that is pending into a story. They're desperate for a story. They would love there to be controversy over whether it's Judge Brown Jackson or Justice Kruger in California or Judge Childs. There isn't going to be any controversy. I think the over-under 65 votes. They don't have an answer. They don't have an initiative. They don't have an exit strategy to stop a red wave that is building, and I don't know how they can come up with one. It actually was a different cut. Let me go and play it because I want you to understand what our friends over at Cook Political Report are doing. Cut number 3.
And to add to those, we'll pull up some ABC Ipsos polling, and it does talk about crime and COVID, but also immigration and approval for the president. Hugh is tough there. He's upside down 30 points on immigration. On crime, the same thing. At COVID, it's 50-49 on approve, disapprove. So he's got multiple topics where Americans are feeling rattled.
President Biden is in a deep hole, Shannon, and it's getting deeper, and he won't stop digging. He's flailing around, and he's failing as a president. 2 numbers to remember. In 2010, that was the first election to follow President Obama's election. House Democrats lost 63 seats. In 2018, the first election to follow President Trump's election, the Republicans lost 43 seats. So this is traditionally the worst year of a president, one term or two. And redistricting is underway, and our friends over at the Cook Political Report keep a scorecard. Republicans have netted 2.5 seats despite just the most amazing, almost Salvador Dali maps that came out of New York and Illinois that are the height of partisan gerrymandering, and I salute them. I salute partisan gerrymandering. But Republicans are going to take back the House. So if Joe Biden's going to get out of that hole, he needs a reset. This afternoon, the White House leaked to the Washington Post. Stop right there. I wanted to put the plan. Cook Political Report keeps track of the net. If you take all the maps that are done, who's picked up gerrymandered seats. Right now, the Republicans are up by 2.5 seats. I think they'll be down by 2.5 seats after they factor in New York's maps. New York's maps are so delightfully disfigured. They make no sense at all except how do we elect the most Democrats? So they're going to wipe out 5 Republicans. And that's okay, by the way. I don't think courts should be involved. What's not okay is for the Pennsylvania and Ohio Supreme Court to strike down maps that favor Republicans, and New York and Illinois courts to say nothing to see here, move along. That's what's happening. And I hope the United States Supreme Court steps in and says one rule to bind them all, which is legislatures decide. Legislatures ought to decide this stuff. But they are getting crushed by Joe Biden. So Whoopi Goldberg, and I have a theory about what Whoopi's doing. I haven't heard it yet. Brian in Cleveland, what is Whoopi doing?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. I'm just curious why you and the other talk shows and stuff are even giving her any relevance.
I
just
think
like talking about Neil Young, and I mean, they're running their mouth, they get their little bit of airtime, they get their clickbait, and then they, fade back off into the sunset.
No, I have a theory, Brian. I will tell you, but you don't have a theory on why she said that. You just are complaining that we're talking about it.
No, she probably got a theory because she needs to be, continue to be relevant. She's useless, worthless.
Well, there is a little ratings catnip there, but I don't think that's it. Thank you, Brian. Mike in Arizona. I'll be over in Arizona on Saturday moderating debates among would-be Arizona GOP nominees for Senate and would-be Arizona governor nominees. So, Mike, I will be in your state this weekend. What do you think Whoopi's doing?
I have a real theory. I think that it's either ignorance or here's my theory, and I think this is true. I think she's allowing a latent distaste for Jewish people to leak out, because if you take someone like her who has the backing and has backed people from the theories of the Black Lives Matter movement, it's pretty obvious to me. You can hear it leaking in her voice, in her tone, everything else. She has a distaste for Jewish people, and and to have an equivalency between Nazis and Jews as two groups of white people entering into a conflict, it seems very obvious to me that there's something deeper with her that's just leaking out very slowly, and now she's going to try to cover her tracks.
Yeah, I will be. She is herself Jewish, by the way. So
I understand that. I understand that, but that I can answer that in a lot of ways, but I'll let that go.
All right. Let me go to Mike in El Segundo, California. Mike, what is Whoopi doing?
Well, first, I just want to point out, everyone listening should look up the Nuremberg Law.
No, stop with everyone listening stuff, Tony.
Okay, fine. The point is that the Nuremberg Law...
No, Tony, stop. The question is, what was Whoopi thinking?
Okay, what she was thinking was, I think her view, being that she's so left-wing, is that Jews are the oppressors. Like in Israel, they always slam Israel and claim Israel, the Jews are the oppressors. So how can you be the victim if you're supposed to be labeled as the oppressor?
I get that. Now that you mean she's anti-Semitic, just like my last caller.
Yeah, and there are anti-Semitic Jews.
Of course there are. And Tony, I think that's a legit. It's not what I think is going on, but it's legit. Thanks, friend. Let me go to Tony in Michigan. That was Jeff in El Segundo. Tony in Michigan.
Morning, Glory.
Morning, Glory, sir.
Yes, sir. What Whoopi Goldberg really means is this was really about a class Holocaust. Now, I don't think that she's racist or anything, but I believe that she doesn't like the whole obsession of the Holocaust that much, because she believes that, hey, why do we have to talk about the Holocaust 24/7, but we don't talk about black issues because blacks are more suppressed? So I believe that's what she really means by that.
No, that's a decent theory. It's different from mine, but it's decent. She may be just appealing to blacks got it worse. That would be historically quite ignorant, but blacks in this era are not oppressed in the way that Jews in the German era were. Jeff in Frisco, Texas. Jeff, what do you think?
Hugh, I think she suffers from the common liberal affliction of needing to appear to be an intellectual.
Okay, posing. One more, Susan in New York. What do you think, Susan? What is Whoopi doing?
Hi, Hugh. Well, either she's trying out for the vacant Supreme Court seat, or she is, I think, blatantly showing that she believes black supremacy. And I think that she is just because of the recent focus on Black Lives Matter and being black and all about race, she's excluding any other race from the race.
All right, so that's a mixture of calls. None of you are right. Whoopi is trying to gin up the base, and we'll talk about race at any moment because the base doesn't care for Joe Biden anymore, and she's a hardcore Democrat. ReliefFactor.com is a sponsor of this show. If you're watching right now, I just leaned over and got my ReliefFactor.com bag, which is beautiful North Carolina blue and lime green. The most easily to recognize bag, the easiest product to take, nature's anti-inflammatories. Icarian, curcumin, and resveratrol and omega. Some of you take Aleve every day. Some of you take Advil every day. Some of you take a baby aspirin every day for blood pressure. Others of you just try to grind through your aches and pains. Would you at least try nature? It's not like it's a wonder drug. It just is what nature has been producing that people have been using for millennia, scientifically gotten down to 4 easy to take, easy to open pills every morning. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95 gets you started. Join the tens of thousands of people who take it every day, including me. Coming right back, America, on the Hugh Hewitt Show. This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Buckle up for 2022. The year in politics is going to be rough. The midterm election year seems predestined to banish the Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress. The country senses infirmity in President Biden, and many worry that our adversaries in China, Russia, and Iran sense that opening too. The shadow campaign for the GOP nomination in 2024 opens now, with a clear frontrunner being former President Donald Trump. The ranks of the top tier among possible GOP presidential nominees in alphabetical order starts with 2 senators, Arkansas's Tom Cotton and Ted Cruz of Texas. Then we have the populist Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. If the world grows even darker in the days to come, Cotton and Pompeo, 2 former soldiers, start with some advantages. It's possible one or more will run whether or not the former president does. My bet with 3 years to go is that Trump runs, and runs hard. Buckle up. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
What the Supreme Court has said is you have to have a compelling state interest, and the compelling state interest that the Supreme Court found was the benefits that flow from having a diverse student body, whatever those benefits may be. But you have to have a diverse student body to get these certain benefits, okay? So that justifies this kind of racial alchemy in terms of admissions. Here's the problem. Increasingly at schools, you have, regardless of how supposedly integrated they are, you're getting more and more racial separatism, separate classes, separate dormitories, separate graduations. There's more and more of that going on, and one of the basic reasons for that is because of mismatch, because of the serious mismatch in academic qualifications between Asians, Latinos, blacks, and whites.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
You want to know what's even crazier and funnier in a sick way? There's a security guard right there. The shoplifter, the looter, walks right by the security guard who isn't doing anything. He's got a jacket on with the big security on the back of his coat, and he stands there and watches the guy. The guy literally brushes right by the security guard. The security guard, what are they paying the security guard for? Just to stand there? Why don't we just put mannequins up in stores in New York? I may never go back. I swear, I may never go back. New York is turning into a hellhole, and Democrats are watching it. They're letting it happen. I can't wait to get Joe Borelli's take on all of this insanity.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt. I am playing Jackson Brown's song because I think he's going to be the next guy to pull his music off Spotify. So I just wanted to give you a few Jackson Brown bumps. We love Jackson Brown here. His politics are crazy, but good singer. I'm just asking the question, what is Whoopi Goldberg, what is she doing? Why could she say something as stupid as she said yesterday? Short form, cut number 7.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
No, it's about
a different race. But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
It's not about race. Of course, it was about race. She has apologized for saying that because it's just dumb, and she knows it's dumb. And everyone who just saw it, I mean, they went to break. They played the music. They played the musical hook. If you ever hear the music come up, that's when Dwayne has decided that I've wandered off the cliff and I need to be saved from myself. But what is motivating it? Bob in Florida, 1-800-520-1234. What do you think, Bob?
Well, my wife and I figured out a long time ago that the only time anybody should listen to anything that Whoopi Goldberg says is when she's playing Guinan on Star Trek and someone else is writing her script.
Well, I agree, but she nevertheless said it. So the question is, why did she say it?
That may remain a mystery for all eternity.
All right, getting inside of Whoopi's head is not easy, but my theory, I already told her I'm going to come back with it in a second. Let me see if Amy in Ohio has a theory. Amy, what do you think?
Well, I think that Whoopi lives in a bubble of CRT and intersectionality where white people are always the enemy, they're always in power. So if she can frame something like the Holocaust as two groups of white people, that just props up even more the idea that white people are always at fault. And I think that's what she's doing. And there's also a tendency on the left for people to look into history at people and events that happened in the past and judge them by today's standards. And in Whoopi's 21st century intersectionality standards, that's what that looks like to her.
That's pretty elevated, Amy. Let me give you my theory and get your response. She's a Democrat. Democrats are in a deep hole. They're going to get crushed. How do I get out? I will use the race card. I will make everything about race, and I will define everything that is not about race as much as possible. So I'm going to try and define the Holocaust and support for Israel and support for NATO out of the question because we have to talk about Black America if we're going to win an election. So she has to make everything about race, and the Holocaust can't be about race.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it's the same defense in every presidential race, in every cancel culture phenomenon right now is if I can't dispute your point, if I can't argue against what you're arguing for, I'm just going to call you racist because nobody wants to be called a racist. So that's like the ultimate, that's like the worst thing you can be called. So I agree, race, bring it up, because we can't argue against your policies or your points, so we're just going to call you racist.
100%. Thank you, Amy. Zachary in Atlanta on AM 920, The Answer. Good morning, Zachary.
Hey, Hugh. Listen, essentially what she's saying is that she's denying the ethnic component of Judaism. I'm Jewish. There is a ethnic component to it. You can convert to Judaism. The Jewish law goes pretty deep into that. I'm sure you don't want to go into the details of how that works. But the thing is, there is a Jewish component. It's not just, an ethnic component to it. It's not just a belief system. You can't just snap your fingers and become Jewish. It's at least not according to Jewish law. You can't. It's not just that there's a process, and she is denying the ethnic element of Judaism, and that is fundamentally anti-Semitic.
But it is fundamentally anti-Semitic. Why is she doing it?
I don't know. I think there may be some kind of animus that she has against the Jewish people. I don't know. I don't know enough about her, but I know that people that typically do this, and that I've dealt with over my life, that say that Judaism is only a belief system. There's nothing deeper to it. There is no Jewish people. There is no descendancy from Abraham. There is no blood connection to the Jewish people. amongst themselves. They deny that. There's a problem with that.
There's a big problem. Okay, I don't know that she's anti-Semitic. I still think she's just trapped in the blue bubble of politics. Ray in Tampa, Florida, you get the last bite at this apple, Ray.
I believe Whoopi, like a lot of other leaders in the black community, believes only racism can be inflicted on African Americans or white people. She doesn't believe racism is available for any other nationality or.
I think you're close. That we got to reserve the race card to mobilize the African American vote, and everything else cannot have a racial component, because if we can't get the African American vote stirred up, we're going to lose this election. And they're desperate. The View is a Democratic show. It's an extension of the DNC, like all of the Sunday shows except Fox News Sunday. It's an extension of the DNC, like all the news networks except Fox. It's all the DNC. And so the DNC doesn't have an agenda. And so Whoopi is trying to suggest to them, make it about race. And we got to get the Jews out of the picture. I'll be right back. We're going to talk about Catholic schools. Their renaissance is upon us.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
This really is a Leninist strategy. Lenin's old saying that the capitalists will sell us the rope by which we will hang them is what China's doing. The Soviets couldn't do it for a couple reasons. Number one, they didn't have the money. They didn't have a whole lot of rubles to throw around, and people in the West didn't want them. But number two, there was a lot bigger sense of social cohesion during the Cold War. The notion, if you're a corporate executive during the Cold War, that you would be playing footsies with the Kremlin was outrageous. And yet in the case of China, the human rights situation, the challenge to American national security is every bit as great. I would argue perhaps even greater than it was in the Cold War era. But Wall Street, Silicon Valley, they are all happy to not only do deals with them, but do deals with them that benefit the Chinese military and intelligence state, and they don't seem to particularly care that they do.
Well, there was stigma in helping the Soviets. There's no stigma in helping the Chinese communists.
That's right. And I think that, part of that is there's been this naivete for decades that if we just gave China money, we gave them access to our technology, they were going to buy our blue jeans, they were going to watch some of our movies, they would become just like us. What's really happened, when you look at issues like censorship by big tech in the United States, when you look at some of the other things that are going on, it's not that China's become more like us. We've actually become more like China. And that experiment has to fade away. And the problem is not only were our elites wrong in their prescription of that policy, but that policy made them rich. And they do not want to now give up those relationships with Beijing because it means the money is going to stop flowing.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Y lo siento mucho.
That's the only time you can come to Christ. When the Spirit of God calls you to the cross, don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I'll have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I would get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
When you had the president in Atlanta saying to the crowd there that, you know, he didn't march in the shoes of the students that are marching today, but that he marched in the civil rights movement, and he remembers the first time he got arrested, when he never marched in any civil rights movement and has never been arrested.
I mean, can we even believe this? That he routinely says things that everyone knows are made up. Nobody calls him on it. Look, this is why you do your program, I do my program. We need to do our best to get the truth out. And we have to be clear. The president, he's plumb loco. I don't know what is going on. I guess I would say this. I'll bet that within his administration, there is very nasty fighting because they see what we see. I'm sure Kamala Harris despises the Biden gang, and the Biden gang despises her. They have to keep that quiet. But it's really something that I think they're going to consume their own.
The Democratic Party knows that they're in trouble. When you say that their staff sees what's going on and we all see it, we got to remember one other thing. Vladimir Putin, Premier Xi, the leader of North Korea, the leader of Iran, these people all see it too. And there is a message being sent globally that America is a laughingstock right now, that the bowl of mashed potatoes that serves as the president in the White House right now is nothing more than a suit.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Could you let that happen for 10 weeks of your children being kept in a box in the library, excluded, put on display, and so on and so forth for that long? I kind of feel like, and I can tell you're a very caring mom, which is why you're bringing this public, but I kind of feel like that would happen for 2 hours, and I would be down there at that school and pulling my kid out, much less 2 to 10 weeks. Did they really endure that for that long?
They really did that for that long, and I really appreciate that question, and I've gotten that question a lot, and how we looked at it as a family is we could pull them and just go about our lives, and they'll just do this to someone else, or we could stay and fight and hold our ground. And my kids didn't want to leave that school. They've been in that school, my son, since 1st grade to 8th grade. They had their friends there. We still had hope that the trusted adults would do the right thing. And we eventually have pulled them to homeschool. But during those weeks, we were fighting. We have hundreds of emails to the administration, the Dallas ISD school board. We went down and I brought 30 or 40 grandmas and grandpas and other parents from other schools down to fight and speak on our behalf. Parents even scheduled protests, 3 protests outside the school. So we were fighting, but I think at this point in our country, the war has come into the family, and our kids can no longer be shielded from it. They need to be guided through it, which we did as a family, to build a backbone and learn how to stand up and fight, because this is their next generation. So instead of shielding them from it, we help them move through it with grace, integrity, and dignity, and they came out stronger.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to all my 450-plus affiliates. Many of you are new, and you've never heard me explain, and I will in the next segment or so, that I am a product of a wonderful family, but also of Catholic education, 12 years of Catholic education, by the Sisters of Divine Providence, the Sisters of Notre Dame, the Franciscan Third Order Regular, and a bunch of great diocesan priests. And as a result, I have a worldview, and it doesn't move much. And I believe that we are at a moment of renaissance for Catholic education, as does Professor Chad Pecknold. He's a professor of theology and anthropology at the Catholic University of America, frequent contributor in the Public Square, great talker. Good morning, Chad. How are you?
I'm all right. It's a great week for Catholic schools, and I'm happy to be on your show to talk about it.
I did not know it was Catholic Schools Week until you actually used the hashtag in your Twitter feed this morning. So I'm glad that we've got it going. But do you agree with me that the collapse of public education credibility in a lot of America has opened the doors for a renewal of Catholic education?
100%. I mean, we have seen. I mean, it does not yet reflect this because the NCEA data only goes up to September of the pandemic, but what we've had, I mean, you experienced the last time that Catholic schools were in a great renaissance, and that was
We've lost his cell phone. Okay, we just lost what you said there, Chad. When was the last renaissance of the Catholics? We're going to have to call him back, Dwayne. We're going to have to go to the emergency callback line. You know what? When you're talking to people over at Catholic University, I don't think Catholic University has a jamming mechanism to the secular world, but they might. It might actually be that CU is jamming all outbound cell phones. But I do believe that if you're a parent right now and you're sitting out there, he's back, Chad. I hope we have a better connection. So you were saying,
sorry, it's a public school conspiracy against Catholic schools to knock me off your show.
So you were saying about the Renaissance of the '60s. Are we there again?
Yeah. I mean, we had massive success back then, and we've been in decline. But since basically September of the pandemic, we've had a massive resurgence in the Boston diocese, for example, up 6,000 new students. That's the first increase that the Boston Catholic school district has had an increase. They had school closures for 30 straight years. This is the first year they have not had a school closure. Just for your listeners, to think about, 6,000 new students for one district is $90 million in what could be voucher money if we had vouchers going to Catholic and classical schools. That's the families are making choices because they are starting to wake up that city and county schools are pushing false ideology on their kids.
And they are being controlled. I think this is the great exposure of government bureaucracy. I believe now people understand that the schools aren't about teaching kids anymore. They're about serving union groups and ideologues. But going back to
100%.
Catholic schools, how are they responding to the challenge? Did any diocese step up and reopen a Catholic high school or add teachers or reaffirm their worldview?
Absolutely. And I think what we see across the country, and we see these bumps in Boston, in Arlington, my own diocese here across the river from the Capitol, we had 1,100 new students. So I have 2 children in Catholic schools at the Basilica of St. Mary's School here in Alexandria, and it was amazing to watch. It was amazing.
That's not your parish, is it?
It is my parish as well. My parish.
How come I've never seen you? You don't go to the 7 a.m. Mass? That's when I go. It's the shortest Mass and no music.
I have seen you there. Hugh, you're so famous that we see you even when you don't see us.
Oh, that's so funny. But it's the white hair is giving it away. But the 7 a.m. Mass at St. Mary's is one of the best masses I've ever been to. It's just...
Well, I'm happy to hear it. I mean, we have a wonderful parish and we have a wonderful school. And the school, was really, really good on mitigation strategies. And we stayed open the whole time. We actually had one child in a public school, and we pulled them out of the public school. Thank God we pulled them out of the public school because that public school never went back. I mean, it's just starting to go back now. We put them in the Catholic school, and they wore masks the whole time. Now they don't have to wear masks, thank God for Governor Youngkin. But they had in-person learning for the whole pandemic.
Now, Chad, I got a question for you, though. When you moved your child to Catholic school, I have no idea what they cost anymore. When I went to high school in the 70s, it was $300 a year. That was a big gulp. It's not $300 even at John F. Kennedy High School in Warren anymore. What is it? And as Catholic philanthropists stepped up to help scholarship kids into the schools.
We absolutely have. We need more of that. Obviously, it's what we do, what many schools do, not just Catholic schools, but classical schools, charter schools do, is a kind of assessment of what a family can afford and allocate the resources that we have. I think on average, a middle class family is probably paying a few $1,000 a year to send their kids to a Catholic school. It depends on the school. So the sticker price is not always the actual price. I think it's affordable insofar as what the student is getting is an actual education that's attentive to eternal truths rather than critical race theory and teaching your kids that there's no genders at all. I think actually what we've seen is that families are choosing, even if they're liberal, even if they're progressive, we're seeing families say, you know what, I can be tolerant between adults, but for my kids, I actually want my kids to know true things.
Well, I agree with you, Chad, but now here's the rub. Are Catholic schools still Catholic? I mean, we don't have Sisters of Divine Providence. We don't have the Sisters of Notre Dame. The Franciscan Third Order regulars are not teaching much anymore. Are Catholic schools still Catholic?
Okay, so here's a great point. I mean, absolutely. Liberal ideology infects everything. It infects churches. It infects families. So Catholic schools aren't immune from this, as you know. What I see was certainly now Arlington, as you know, is a more conservative Catholic, diocese. So I'm a little bit biased, but what I see is an emphasis on catechesis, an emphasis on actually making sure that all the kids know what the Catholic faith teaches about eternal truth. It's not forcing them to believe. If you go into a public school, a city or county school, you're forced to believe in race essentialism. If you go to a Catholic school, you're not forced to believe in God, but you're given the opportunity to learn about the eternal truths that the faith teaches. And I see that many, many Catholic superintendents, Catholic school superintendents, realize this is their distinctive, that they're offering something different, as you said in your opening, a different worldview, a different way of seeing the world. And I think Catholic principals are realizing that they actually have this unique opportunity to seize this renaissance, to seize this turnaround. If Boston Diocese is getting 6,000 new students, what are parents choosing? They're choosing to free their kids from the teachers' unions.
I pray you are right. I'm talking with Chad Pecknold, who is the professor at Catholic University. We're talking about Catholic School Week and the fact. Now, the question is, who does the most good here, Chad? Is there an organization that devotes itself exclusively to scholarshiping students into good Catholic schools, or is it all diocese by diocese?
It's diocese by diocese, and so I think, if people want to give money, they should call up their bishop. Bishops and cardinals and archbishops were very important during the pandemic. People don't realize that bishops were, they get a bad rap, but they were on the phone with governors saying, we want to open. When, the teachers' unions wanted to stay closed, Catholic schools wanted to stay open, and they figured out a way, and they got governors to sign on to them being open when city and county schools were closed because of the teacher unions. And so I would say call up your local diocese and say, I'd like to help support Catholic schools, or even just Call the principal of your local Catholic school and say, how can I help?
I agree with this, and I really hope that people realize it's an opportunity to change your child's life. There's a good Catholic school near you. If you think the ticket is too high, call them up and talk to them about it. They will work out a plan, Chad, 30 seconds. They will work with you, won't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can't afford it, we'll find a way to get you in.
Chad Pecknold, thank you, my friend. Professor Pecknold is over at Catholic University. Also a St. Mary's school advocate. Good for you. I'll be right back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. Buckle up for 2022. The year in politics is going to be rough. The midterm election year seems predestined to banish the Democratic majorities in both houses of Congress. The country senses infirmity in President Biden, and many worry that our adversaries in China, Russia, and Iran sense that opening too. The shadow campaign for the GOP nomination in 2024 opens now, with the clear frontrunner being former President Donald Trump. The ranks of the top tier among possible GOP presidential nominees in alphabetical order starts with two senators, Arkansas's Tom Cotton and Ted Cruz of Texas. Then we have the populist Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. If the world grows even darker in the days to come, Cotton and Pompeo, two former soldiers, start with some advantages. It's possible one or more will run whether or not the former president does. My bet with 3 years to go is that Trump runs, and runs hard. Buckle up. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Look at you! Ow! Hey, I wasn't ready for that.
And there goes Peter Dinklage beating the crap out of Will Ferrell for calling him an angry elf. I mean, listen, he's certainly not an elf, but he's an angry guy. You know, I hate to put everything in a political perspective here, but isn't it true? And I assume Peter Dinklage is no conservative. He's woke. He wants to cancel Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Why do they always want to cancel everything? You know, they want to cancel everything. What do conservatives believe in? We are for things. Biden's always saying, why are Republicans not for anything? Yes, we're for everything. We're for people. We're for people's right to make decisions about their health. We're for movies. We're for different views on the airwaves. We're not for people being canceled or movies being canceled or things being canceled. We're for things. And your side, Biden, is against everything. You're against Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Oh, I mean, Disney obviously taking it seriously because they're redoing the whole movie, I guess. Seriously, what do you portray them as children? Should child actors play the Seven Dwarfs? You're going to get little Billy or Susie, who's about 9? The Seven Dwarfs in Snow White aren't children. Grumpy isn't a kid. I mean, in fact, that would be a great, if they're casting people, maybe Peter Dinklage can play Grumpy. Because he fit right in.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
So I think in their strategy meeting, they said, okay, people say that Joe Biden's mental decline is impacting his ability to govern. Let's shoot Joe up with whatever sort of kind of adrenaline that is necessary and deploy him out there. I think the point was to try to show that Joe Biden was going to go over the top long, to try to win kudos and praise from the establishment media. This is his first press conference I think he's done in quite some time. Some people said it was his first ever press conference as president. Second? Okay. That was his second press conference. Trump used to do these almost daily. He did them for fun. And I will say, for reasons that we can speculate, where he kind of like hunches over the podium. You notice that, Connor? And he kind of puts both of his arms down and he looks directly at the reporter. And then he whispers, you're exactly right. And he was still calling from a pre-selected list of reporters. And there were multiple blunders that came out of that. But if the point was to try to show the nation, look at, hey, if you have any concerns about how sharp this guy is mentally, I mean, come on. He stood there and talked for 2 hours. I don't think that mission was accomplished.
Keep up with
Welcome back, America. 22 minutes after the hour. I'm Hugh Hewitt. It's Catholic School Weeks. And I just want to emphasize what Professor Pecknold just said. There are great opportunities to get your kids out of the mess that they're in public schools right now. Just call the local Catholic school and tell them, I want in. I want a desk. And we need like 10,000. I just was looking up Sister Mary Jean Carrero, who was Sister Aloysius to me, Sister Rita Burns, Sister Noreen Stearns. They were respectively Sister Timothy and Sister Columba to me. But all of these sisters that used to do Catholic education, their numbers are fewer, but there are great Catholic schools that provide a worldview which will protect and guide the development of your child. And it's so different from the secular worldview. And I know there are lots of great Christian schools as well, Protestant division. And I know they're also good worldview schools. But you got to move your kids somewhere. And it's likely that there are more chairs in Catholic schools than there are it doesn't matter, by the way. You can be Jewish or Mormon or Protestant or Catholic. It doesn't matter. Get your kids there. If you ask, help will be found. I really, really do believe that. And you will be so grateful for that opportunity. There are great public schools out there. My kids went to great public schools. My grandkids go to great public schools. But a lot of public schools are refusing to go back to their core mission. And if that's yours, get out. Because they're never going to get better. Just get out. I would check the market now, brought to you by andrewandtodd.com. Yesterday was a great market day. 1-800-520-1234, by the way. Do you agree with Chad Pecknold and I? Time to get your kid out and into a Catholic school, and is your diocese doing something about it? They ought to be marketing everywhere. They ought to say, my alma mater, John F. Kennedy High School, we've got 80 chairs. I don't know what the number of chairs they have. And they ought to be asking their alumni to send in scholarships. If you don't ask, you don't get. But you should be asking, you should be doing, you should be knowing what the actual cost, marginal cost of a chair is different from actual cost of a chair. And we got to get kids into those places. 1-800-520-1234. If you're a philanthropist, the best use of your money is to support good Christian education at the K through 12 level. It is the very best use of your money. I'm still gobsmacked by LeBron James giving millions and millions of dollars to Akron City Schools. You know, it's nice generosity. He graduated from Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. And he didn't give money to that. Maybe he did. I don't know. I don't know his heart. But I just don't understand. If you're a product of Catholic schools, you ought to give to Catholic schools. The Dow went up 408 points yesterday. The NASDAQ went up 469. The S&P went up 83. And the 10-year Treasury note went down to 1.782%. So andrewandtodd.com, andrewandtodd.com. Call them. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian. They will help you buy a house or refinance a house. If you want to get money out of your house to pay for private school, you said, okay, I'm going to have to come up with $1,000 a year. The schools will cut me a deal, but I've got 3 kids and it's going to cost $3,000 a year. Where do I get that money? Use your house as your bank. There's no better investment in your kids. And if you're going to a bad public school, you're actually de-educating them. Go to andrewandtodd.com and make the sacrifice, like Marg and Bill did for their 3 kids. Stephen in Michigan. Hey, Stephen, what do you think?
Hi, Hugh. Thanks very much for taking my call. I always enjoy hearing your opinions and enlightening me each morning. Out here in Troy, they continue to bow to the left and keep our schools closed during 6th grade. And in the 3 months they were closed, watched my son just flail in the wind and lose progress. We made the switch to Catholic schools, sent both the kids there. You know, the academies under 8th grade, they're, $5,000-6,000 a year.
What's it cost? What's the burden total for your family, Stephen?
We're looking at about $11,500 for 2 kids, and next year it'll be closer to 23.
We need deductions for that. Because Stephen, you are doing the right thing. The sacrifice you are making is the right thing to do. God bless you. I'll be right back, America. Senator Tom Cotton is next on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands,
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
that's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. Sometimes there are policies so destructive that at first you don't believe they're true. Joe Biden is currently defending one, his plan to award $450,000 to migrants separated from their families after entering the U.S. illegally. Children of deceased U.S. soldiers are separated from their parents permanently. They don't receive this kind of money. And migrants who enter the U.S. legally certainly don't get this kind of payout. The really big jackpot, it seems, is being reserved for the lawbreakers. There are some obvious truths here. First, behavior that's subsidized gets repeated. Joe Biden is effectively inviting many more illegal immigrants to breach America's open borders. Second, he's betting over time the payoffs will benefit his party in political terms. Meanwhile, the vast majority of Americans watch in shock and dismay as our president, the country's chief law enforcement officer, brazenly rewards lawbreaking, a clear violation of his oath to defend our nation's laws. It's a sorry sight indeed.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow...
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how a
Welcome back, America. I'm playing artists who might pull their music from Spotify. So it's Jackson Brown today. I'm joined by United States Senator Tom Cotton, Republican from Arkansas. Good morning, Senator Cotton. Do you play golf?
Hugh, I used to play golf, but I hung it up in my Army days when I spent all my time out running and training.
All right, I wanted to warn you. My old White House boss, Dick Hauser, is out on the first tee this morning trying to get someone to give him strokes, and I figure you might be nice enough if Dick Hauser takes you to golf to give him strokes. Don't do that. So, Senator Cotton, we're talking about education this morning. You and I normally talk about Ukraine. We normally talk about China, armed services, intel, and judges. Let me ask about judges. Do you expect a timely and respectful hearing for whomever President Biden nominates to the Supreme Court?
I do, Hugh. Obviously, we'll give this woman a very careful and thorough review. We will study what is her record. In all likelihood, it seems what will be her judicial record, since the indicators are that this is likely to be a sitting judge. We will carefully review her professional record before her time as a judge. And obviously, there's matters of investment history and other history in one's past. The FBI investigates that. It's routine for every federal judge. Obviously, the stakes and the attention are a little bit higher in the Supreme Court context than it is in lower court context. But this is something the Judiciary Committee does routinely. I can't say that I have high expectations that Joe Biden will nominate someone whose views of the Constitution and the rule of law I can support. But I can say that I, for one, and I doubt any Republican senator, will engage in the kind of obscene smears and personal attacks that are totally baseless that the left launched most famously and originally against Clarence Thomas and then renewed against Brett Kavanaugh.
I got Senator Cotton. Most famous and originally against Judge Bork.
So, Hugh, I think you're starting to show your age, or at least my relative youth.
That's true. I mean, you weren't born then.
So I do. So if I recall, Hugh, though, although what Joe Biden and Ted Kennedy and the rest did to Judge Bork, it originated the term borking, which is unfair attacks on a judicial nominee. But if I recall, wasn't the controversy about Judge Bork primarily about his legal views and his writings and his rulings?
Yeah, the key smear was that he would be indifferent to back alley abortions.
Yeah, and that was obviously a lie. But Hugh, to me, that's a horse of a different color of what Clarence Thomas faced. Clarence Thomas is a fine man and an outstanding jurist, and the kind of baseless personal attacks that he faced had been trumped up at the last minute, that had been facilitated by Joe Biden and his Judiciary Committee is beyond the pale.
Fair point. Now, I think the over-under on votes is 65 for the new judicial nominee, because some people, and I expect you will be one of them, will vote against the judicial nominee because they will have an expansive view of judicial power, but it won't be a personal animus. And there are a bunch of us, and I'm on the side of a president gets a nominee unless they've got a Abe Fortas problem. They're corrupt. And so and it ought to be fairly quick if they win the presidency, unless it's the last year. I'm with McConnell. So in terms of expectation, Democrats want to fight. They're not going to get one of the sort that they want to gin up their base. Or am I wrong, Senator Cotton?
Well, if you want to put the vote total at 65 for Joe Biden's nominee, before we even know the name of that nominee, I'll probably take the under on that. And the reason I say that to you is I've reviewed several dozen of Joe Biden's nominees to the lower courts. And almost to a person, these nominees have been left-wing ideologues who view the Constitution not as a constraint on government power, not as the fundamental law to be observed and upheld in our system of government by laws, but by men. Then I'd be very surprised if he breaks with that practice at the Supreme Court.
I think you're going to get a very liberal left-wing judge, and I think it'll be 65 votes because of the reflection of the traditionalist Republican approach to judges, which is absent an Abe Fortas deal, you get it. Now let me ask you. Go ahead, Senator.
I just want to make one point. You made the justice that this nominee is going to be replacing is a good case in point of what you said, though, about having very different judicial philosophies. Outside the occasional antitrust or administrative law decision, there are not many decisions that Justice Breyer joined over the course of his long career at the Supreme Court that I agree with. However, I respect Justice Breyer. You know him. He's been on your show, which speaks very well that he's willing to come on a show like yours to talk about his books and his approach to jurisprudence. There's a big difference between saying, as you often say, Hugh, between saying someone is wrong and saying someone is right.
Yep.
A lot of Republicans may say this nominee is wrong as a jurist and wrong on jurisprudence. Again, that's a horse of a different color from what the Democrats did to say Brett Kavanaugh or Clarence Thomas, which is trying to spin lies to make them appear as if they are rotten.
And there was some of that with Justice Coney Barrett as well. But the Democrats realized that they were about to burn their fingers on Catholicism big time, and they backed away. Let me turn Senator Cotton, because this is not in your wheelhouse, but I'm curious. It is Catholic school weeks. I think across the country, what Arthur Herman calls the Great Confinement has realigned politics primarily around the failure of public schools to do their mission for 2 years. And I'm hoping people put their kids into Catholic schools or Christian schools or private schools. Have you sensed out on the road as you travel for candidates for 2022 that what Arthur Herman said is true, that the Great Confinement has shattered parents' confidence in government, especially government-run schools?
Yeah, very much so, Hugh. Like, once you get outside of a few blue citadels, like, frankly, the Washington, D.C. region is the most COVID-neurotic place in America. And I've been to places like Los Angeles and New York over the last 6 months or so. Washington, D.C. is by far the most COVID-neurotic place in America. But once you get outside of a handful of those blue citadels, most Americans are ready to move back to normal life. I mean, when I'm home on the weekends or for recesses, you take your mask off when you walk outside the airport in Little Rock or Northwest Arkansas, and you don't put it on until you go back into the airport. You go back to Washington for a legislative session. There are no vaccine passports at restaurants. People are not wearing masks when you go into the Walmart or the Kroger. Schools are open. The only reason schools have been closed for the last year and a half in Arkansas is you had occasional, as in mid-January, occasional instances in which schools had too many people staff as teachers or bus drivers who were sick and therefore staying home to have classes open. But otherwise, it's been normal.
And will the government move on? This is coming to the reset question. I have argued that Becerra's got to go, Zients has got to go, Fauci and Walensky got to go, that they do not have any credibility with at least half of the American public. And if you're going to reset COVID policy, especially before another variant or a different public health crisis arrives, you've got to have a clean sweep. Do you see any indication that anybody's going to go from Team Biden?
They should, but this is, I think this is in part, Hugh, a case where the Democratic Party leadership is being led by the Democratic Party membership. You have a few exceptions around the country among Democratic mayors and governors, but for the most part, from Joe Biden on down, just like they capture by the far left when it comes to things like critical race theory or structural racism and all that nonsense. They're also captured by their far left when it comes to neurotic COVID obsession. And Democratic politicians, whenever they start recommending that that things get back to normal, that schools be open, that we don't obsess about vaccine passports and mask mandates anymore, I think they face a lot of criticism from their far left voters. Now,
if Republicans
that's not a majority.
It's not. It's probably less than 20% of the country and not even 50% of the Democratic Party. But if the Republicans get the House and the Senate back, is there anything they can do with Joe Biden in the White House to fix American education?
I think it's going to be tough with Joe Biden in the White House because another problem you have with American education, Hugh, is the influence of the teachers' union, especially teachers' unions at the national level in big cities. Not really an issue in Arkansas, but in a lot of cities, in a lot of states it is. And that's, again, what did Arthur Herman call it, the Great Confinement?
Yes.
I think in the school context, it's another instance, or another problem you have is with these teachers' unions that have been insisting on these kind of crazy safetyism policies. You had Chicago schools, for instance, refusing to go back into session.
And Detroit.
That's right. And other places around the country where public school systems are beholden to far left teachers union leaders and therefore not serving their students very well. So when we take back the House and the Senate this November, I can assure you that trying to ensure every child has a good education and that every parent has a say in their kid's education, whether that education happens in a public school or charter school or a religious school, I think we're going to face, kind of constant efforts to undermine those principles from the Biden administration and the Biden Department of Education.
Last question, Senator Cotton. If the House and Senate are Republican, that means reconciliation will be open. Is it a reconciliation eligible action to provide for a tax credit for private tuition K through 12?
Probably, Hugh. We obviously have to study the budget rules and the precedents on that. But in general, anything that is a tax is eligible for reconciliation. That's how, for instance, we repealed the hated Obamacare mandate in 2017 using reconciliation because the Supreme Court had held that is a tax penalty for not having health insurance. The issue, I think, is probably not so much whether it's eligible for a reconciliation vote at a mere majority in the Senate. The issue is whether Joe Biden, beholden to the teachers union, would ever support such a thing.
I can't.
That's a much longer shot.
I cannot imagine a president vetoing a tax credit for private education. I really can't. I know the teachers would want it vetoed, but I hope Republicans do that, Senator, because it would be the delineation of the timid and the union-owned versus those who care about kids. Last word to you.
I think that's right, Hugh, and I think that could be a campaign centerpiece. Just has been a centerpiece for gubernatorial races this year around the country, that Republican candidates are making clear that we have our faith in parents, and we want to make sure that parents can choose the best education for that kids. In many cases and in many places, that's going to be a high-quality public school. But in other places, it's going to be a private school or a religious school. And what we should support parents to the extent we can in making those choices, especially working-class parents, who don't have the means to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on K-12 education.
Well said, Senator Tom Cotton. Always a pleasure. I hope you give that speech. I hope you lead that charge. You did lead the charge to repeal the Obamacare tax. So leading the charge to give a private education credit K through 12, good campaign issue, Senator Cotton, if someone's running for president, just saying. I want to remind everyone, ReliefFactor.com, great spot. By the way, America, do you support that? 1-800-520-1234. ReliefFactor.com, great sponsor of the show. An absolute must get. An absolute superb way to fight back against age and the aches and pains that come with exercise. Senator Cotton doesn't golf anymore, but I hope my friend Hauser, who's down there on the first tee in Miami trying to get people to give him strokes. He's a scratch golfer in Miami. Don't give him any strokes. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95. Get you going. Stay tuned.
Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith. That one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy. This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. No word yet on the Winston-Salem fire that I've been following. I think it's under control. I haven't seen any other, been evacuation, about 3,000 people from the fertilizer factory fire in Winston-Salem. If you're just joining in, this is Catholic Schools Week, and I had Chad Pecknold from Catholic University on, and I was saluting people like Sister Mary Jean Coerwo and Sister Rita Burns and Sister Noreen Stearns. These are all nuns who make Catholic schools go round and round. Two of them have gone to their reward. But if you're going to work today in a Catholic school, my hat is off to you. You're doing the Lord's work, and you're storing up treasure in heaven. Claire in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hello, Claire.
Hey, good morning, Hugh. Hey, I'm a new listener to your show. I found you on the weekend with your town hall review, and I became intrigued by your message, and I happened to turn you on this morning, and you were talking about marketing of Catholic schools and this being a great opportunity for the Catholic schools to use the climate of today. And I was telling your screener that unfortunately the schools are closing. They're closing and they're getting less and less schools. And the marketing message that it's sending to the Catholic community is the schools aren't a priority for our local diocese anyway. And the school that I went to and my mother went to and my children went to was now consolidated. Technically, I guess they wouldn't say it was closed. It was just consolidated to a different area. And I was very upset about that because I was like, don't they understand that children are the future? Children are the future of our faith and of the church in the world, and they don't seem committed to the school. So they're not taking advantage of this great opportunity.
I think it's actually a patchwork, Claire. I believe they are in Arlington diocese filling up every chair that's available. I have actually seen some dioceses reopen schools, others make an appeal, but it is uneven, and it would require a great deal of faith, which one would expect bishops and their superintendents to have, to make an appeal to the community and to cut the ticket cost. But some people are doing it, and it's necessary to do it more. So I appreciate your call. Call up your bishop in Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, you had Bishop Worrell for a while, so there's a lot of recovery to do there.
Yes, I remember him.
Yeah, not good. Okay. Gary in Virginia. Good morning, Gary. What do you think?
Hugh, I couldn't thank you enough for your commentary on Catholic schools. I completely agree. We're the parents of 9 children. I've had them all go to Catholic schools in the greater D.C. area. I'm in the Arlington Diocese, like yourself. Great schools, Oakcrest, the Heights, many schools in this area that see the parents as the primary educators of their children and partner with them to get them to think well. So it's opposed to indoctrination. It's getting these young people the skills they need to think through a complex world that we live in. And one other point, it gives these young people the ability to enable our first world developed economy. We need young people that can think.
And Gary, I'm not ashamed. It also gives them a head start to heaven, right? That's the basic reason. Amen. So you're 9 kids. Did you ever total up what it costs to send 9 kids to Catholic schools?
No, that calculus is best rendered, like you said, laying up treasures in heaven. I would say God provides, and you made a great point earlier, Hugh. If people are a little bit concerned about the economics, make sure that they engage the schools and let the schools work with them. It's an investment in your children early, often, and it pays dividends.
Yeah, I want to tell people they can say no, they might say no, but they can't say yes unless you ask them.
That's exactly right, Hugh. Perfectly said.
All right, thank you, my friend. I want to get one more in. Wesley in Georgia. Hi, Wesley.
Hi, Hugh. I'm in Georgia, but I'm aware of the backpack bill in Ohio because of your show. You're exactly correct. Let the money follow the students, and free markets will bring good education to our country. Republicans ought to ride this into the White House in 2024, and thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you. Literally, if you're listening to me, Kevin McCarthy and Leader McConnell, advocating for a tax credit on a reconciliation bill for private school tuition, regardless of whether it's secular or sectarian, just get a tax credit. And that will win the Republicans every seat in the, giving parents an option to get the hell out of public schools that are running insane. Not all public schools are insane. A lot of them are. But giving them a way out, a tax credit, that is the killer app for Republicans. Break the back of the public school monopoly. The Catholic schools will reopen. The Christian schools will be founded. The private sectarian schools will flourish. The private secular schools will flourish. Go and do it. Just do it, Republicans. Tax credit at the federal level. Make it part of your campaign for the House and the Senate. I'll be back tomorrow with just more Common Sense America Catholic School Weeks, though. Press on. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Adam, Dwayne, and Ben. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.